Hey, this is Sky. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Thursday night, I'm just chilling, watching some football. Let's talk about 15 things, I don't know how many is here on my list, 14 things that I had to study in order to get where I am right now. Now, I had to start over. I've had to start over a couple times in my life. I don't know if you've ever started over, but I had to. I was extremely unhappy with the person that I had ended up. I had made all the wrong choices in my life from the time I was a kid up until my 30s, and somewhere in my 30s I decided I need to change, or I'm probably going to spend the rest of my life in prison or get murdered. When I realized that when I started over that I had to give up most of who I was. Now, a lot of you might not be able to relate. You might not be as fucked up as I was. I had to give up all my friends, all my connections, and I had built connections in the streets over 20 years. Good connections. Connections people wish they had. Connections that were through my father. My father was a career criminal, was murdered in the streets in a gang war in 1991. I gave up all of that, and that was scary because that's all I had. And I turned myself into nothing. And it was weird and awkward. I didn't know who I was anymore. I gave up California. I left California. Not because I was running from something, but I needed to start over. And I realized California was a dead end. All it was going to offer me was Pelican Bay, so I started studying in order to kind of relearn who I was, relearn how to be a person. Now, maybe many of you got taught this by your dad, and that's great. My dad was a criminal and he got murdered when I was 20. So by the time I was in my mid-30s, who am I going to turn to? I don't have any mentors. So I started from the beginning. Now, some of you may not need to learn some of this stuff, but if you're starting over, like I was, completely starting over, from scratch, I don't care what age you are, you could do this at 40, 50, 20, you may need to study some of this stuff too. I had to study good. What is good? I sat and philosophized. What is good? I don't really know what good is. Isn't that just some subjective quality? What's good could be not so good for me. What you think is good for you, if you say that's good, what if I don't agree? What is good? I got lost in it. I realized that I'd been living in a bizarro world, an opposite world. But the criminal world is kind of like that. There's an interview with Ice-T, the rapper Ice-T, who I've met a couple times. My brother has been friends with him for decades. And Ice-T talked about the criminal underworld as being like a bizarro world, like where everything's flipped on its head. It's like the opposite world. And some of you guys that lived it, you understand. So to be just like a regular civilian, I didn't know what good was, because I was rather evil. I had to study the difference between good and bad, between good and evil, to learn what true evil is, to recognize it, to classify it, to identify it, to accept that that's what I had done, and to learn what good is, so I could make a conscious choice every day at that crossroad. I had to learn what right and wrong is, and sometimes good and evil are different than right and wrong. Good and evil could be mystical, could be biblical, could be spiritual, could be existential. Right and wrong could be political. Could be a stop sign or a politician or a rule. And I just had to learn this stuff. I found myself really in this not knowing. I don't know. What is right, what's wrong? I don't know. So I had to study. And I had to do a lot of this without the internet. Oh, the internet's so great. That's at the library. We used to go to libraries. I had to study virtue. I didn't even know what the word meant. I had to study what it meant. Start with the dictionary. Virtue. It's in the back under V. And then I had to start reading about philosophers that are talking about it. And to understand it from the French point of view and from the German point of view and the American point of view and the religious point of view. I had to study morality. These are all topics that you could be studying. I talk about mind, body, and soul in every video, and I ask you guys on Sunday, are you studying? I ask you guys in the calls, are you studying? This is stuff that I had to study to save my life. I had heard this word character. I had been a person of low character. I didn't know what that meant. What does it mean to have character? So I had to study that and learn what the word meant and then go find examples of it. I found myself watching Little House on the Prairie and Andy Griffith and trying to find these models of character. I had to learn what humility was. And that meant I had to give up a little bit of my ego, and that meant I had to learn to survive in a slightly different way. Be a little more confident in myself. Only the confident people can be humble. You see somebody who lacks humility, that's a lack of confidence as well. That's a weakling. I had to learn what forgiveness is, and there goes something that's even harder. You want to see a strong man? You go find someone who's able to forgive. Only the weak hold grudges. A weakling can hold a grudge. A grudge is easy to hold. A baby can hold a grudge. It takes a grown man who thinks and has restraint to be able to forgive. I had to start practicing this stuff, not just learn it and then check it off my list, but to practice this stuff. So I go around being humble, going around forgiving. Some of the forgiving meant I had to apologize. I apologized to a few different people that I had wronged. And sometimes people don't really accept the apology, and I'm like, well, I'm a good person now. They didn't care. But it still felt like I was doing good. I was in the right direction. I had to learn what manhood was. My dad had always told me, you got to be a man. But it was more of a threat. I didn't know what that meant. And it's hard to like flex a muscle and say, okay, am I a man yet? How about now? Am I doing it right? He was never around when I was a kid to teach me manhood skills. I discovered my dad later in life, and he indoctrinated me into his mob. So I didn't really know what manhood is. I had to study it. Go find role models. Read about it, learn about it, ask questions about it. Learn what masculinity is. What's toxic masculinity? Is there such a thing? Is that just some shit that feminine, man-hating, blue-haired bitches say because they hate their ex-boyfriends or the guy that rejected them in high school? I had to learn what fatherhood is. Not to bash my own dad, but to learn how to be a father. And I'm not a father. I don't have kids. But I had to learn how to be a father. Partially because I had to learn how to be the father that I always needed in my life. To be that man that I had always wished I had. What kind of father do you think that you wish you had? What would be the perfect dad? You can write it down. What does he look like? What does he smell like? What does he dress like? What does he do? How does he hang out? What kind of stuff does he talk about? Paint a picture like you're writing a story, like a movie. Who is the guy? And then be that. I had to study atonement. I didn't know what the word meant. I mean, I'd heard it before. I don't know what it means. I had to study it. I went to Israel. I studied atonement in Israel at the Wailing Wall. I had to study repentance. I mean, I still study these things. I have to live these things. I had to understand my place in the world. So I had to study this hierarchy of man where it goes God the Father, the supreme being at the top. And then man is made in God's image. And women are made from man, Adam's rib. And children are under women. They come out of women. And that's the hierarchy. Children answer to the women answer to the men, and the men answer to God. And I had to learn my place. I had to learn to become really solid in these areas, in every single one of these. But at the same time, you have to be able to be humble enough to take in new information and to evolve and to grow. And I can say that when I started this path when I was in my mid-30s, I am different now in my mid-50s. But I still study this stuff daily, weekly. So get on top of it, mind, body, and soul, every single day.